Everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Dudes Talking. Further Biden revelations with Kevin Marsden. Kevin, are you there, brother?
I am indeed.
Good to have you back. I wanted you to discuss the Hunter Biden uh, laptop revelations, and for us to further discuss the corruption of the Bidens and their connections to Privat Bank and NAFTA gas and Burisma, and the trials and tribulations that have been occurring greatly for the Ukrainian people on to the benefit of the Bidens, among others. So that's why I wanted to have you back to discuss the new information that has been released.
Well, there's so much to take in, especially all these emails that are coming out from this laptop. A lot of it they're talking about is China, and I wish they would release more of the information because they're not releasing all of it. It's like this stupid drip, drip, drip thing is not good. But you see, there's with Ukraine, there's like four parts to it. You have, for instance, the Burisma, you have NAFTA gas, you have Antac, and you have Privat Bank. You see, they're all interlinked in one way or another. And when you look at, for instance, let's talk about Burisma for a quick second. The guy that owned Burisma is a guy called Nikolai Tchaikovsky. He used to be the Minister of Environment, something like that, for the Ukrainians at the time when he was in Yanukovych's government. And what he did was he used to take all the prize, jobs, and send them to his own company. Then when Yanukovych failed, he fled the country with apparently 5 billion stolen from the banks or from the estate. There's a lot of controversy with Nikolai Tchaikovsky for those reasons alone. And Burisma is a very, very dodgy company, and everybody knows it. And yet, for some known reason, Tchaikovsky seems to have managed to pull in relevant people into protecting this, and basically, corruption of this is unbelievable. So you've got Tchaikovsky there, you've got ANTAC, which is this anti-corruption, which is supposed to be helping the national NABU, deal with the corruption. But the anti-corruption group is an organisation, a non-profit organisation, which is funded by our friend George Soros. These are the same people that wrote the Black Ledger against Paul Manafort, this fake dossier that was created by them. Then we have NAFTA Gas. Now, NAFTA Gas is the national gas company for Ukraine that supplies all the gas for people. And there was another gas company called European Gas Company, and that was owned by a guy called Dmitry Firtash, who was good friends with Yanukovych. Of course, his enemy was Yulia Tymoshenko, who was put in prison by Yanukovych because she was known as the Gazprom Queen. I know this is very complicated. There's lots of angles to it. But the Privat Bank angle of it is the one where all the money goes into. So Privat Bank is like one of the main banks. It was owned by two people. One of the names is Kolomoisky. And Kolomoisky was the guy that helped fund the revolution and the war in the eastern Ukraine. He was made a governor of the area by Poroshenko. Now, it's turning out Poroshenko is probably one of the most corrupt presidents that ever been in Ukraine, but he wasn't really a president, because the president of Ukraine actually was Joe Biden. So on this piece we've got up here, we've got the critical Biden put pressure on Poroshenko for Privat Bank nationalization. So when you look at this document, this article, if you go down a bit to it, the voice is purportedly Joe Biden's. Let me ask you one thing before I forget. Privat Bank. I understand the governor of the National Bank is tentative about setting a date certain for the transition to take place, and I'm being told secondhand I know this is her position for sure, and she is unsure of the date until she gets agreement from you, I told. So here we have Joe Biden, right, taking on board, there's an echo. John, echo. I'm getting reverb.
Are you wearing headphones by chance?
No, I'm not wearing headphones.
That might be why.
Do you want me on headphones?
I'll go ahead and talk while you try to get some headphones in. So Zolochevsky, something that I want to make note about him was that he was Deputy Secretary for the Economic and Social Security, but later he was the Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources from July 2010 and April 2012. So it's very interesting that you have a man who works on, who co-founded, Burisma, and Burisma is a energy exploration, company dealing mainly with natural gas. But yet you have him on the board, being a Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources. So that's an extremely strong conflict of interest, in my opinion. And then also, as far as Burisma is concerned, the Atlantic Council in, I want to say 2017, partnered up with Burisma, and we're talking about working with them as far as to stand against corruption, which is hilarious in my opinion. Are you there?
We're jumping ahead a bit here.
Yes. But I just wanted to make that to known to you guys about Burisma, and about Stolchevsky.
Hear me?
Yes, I can. I don't think there's any feedback anymore, Kevin. You sound fine.
So, what we're looking at is, but the Atlantic Council, there's too much of a delay here.
You sound fine on my end.
We got.
There's a delay.
You sound good. You sound fine on my end.
Yeah, it's just if I put the headphones on, it was a complete delay.
Okay.
I have to take the headphones. I have to deal with it. So anyway, let's go back to this thing here, because the IMF was also putting loans into this bank, and they sold this story to the Ukrainian people that had no money, so therefore they had to nationalize it.
Yes, continue.
So they nationalized this bank.
Yes, they nationalized Privat Bank.
Exactly, but when did they nationalise it? They nationalised it in December of 2016. In November, it was where the big push was coming from Biden, Poroshenko, to hurry up in nationalising this bank.
Kevin,
so, yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, so if we go to the second article, which was where we got Kolomoisky on the World News Breaking News, so that should be the next one. Right, so we got Kolomoisky here asking where did the billions of Privat Bank go? So, according to Igor Kolomoisky, the operations took place in full control and strict management deputy of the head of the MBU, Katrina Roskova. She's a very interesting character. We'll go into her a bit later on. But here we've got the actual main body that's in charge of the banking saying there's nothing wrong with the bank, according to Kolomoisky.
Yes, interesting. Okay.
All right, so if we go down a bit here, it says, according to the documents, the auditors verified the largest borrowers found on April 1st, 2015. The risk of loan defaults were measured in excess of 82 billion, and as of October 1st, 2016, it increased to more than 115 billion Ukrainian money. according to the document stating the investigator, restructured credit portfolio debt, 170 previous borrowers have been translated into more than 30 new ones still owe the bank more than 110 billion Ukrainian her. So this bank is, for some reason or another, completely, if it's been like that since 2015, why did the USA put money in there? Why did the IMF put money in there?
Yeah.
Because that's where they were told to put the money. Don't forget, ANTAC is also connected to Privatbank. The anti-corruption people, their funding goes through Privatbank. Now, if we go to the next one, which is the Latvia document, document leak what ties Latvia's ex-President Biden's son and Privatbank together. So we now can see that when they were doing the research, the Latvians, which have a real stringent thing about money laundering, and they are very hot on it, suddenly saw all these payments. And it was to do with the company Rosemont Seneca and to the Morgan Stanley Bank in New York.
So Rosemont Seneca was owned by Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden and Devon Archer and Chris Hines. It's an article that people should read.
$83,333.33 was transferred.
Yeah. In one single operation. Don't forget also this money was also coming through from Cyprus as well. This is how they notice all these money, and they're like loans. They call them loans. Yeah, you see, they see a lot of this. They call them loans, and Latvia's Finance and Capital Market Commission public relations specialist Dace Janovic said the commission is not allowed to reveal any names and specific preventative measures. It also is not allowed to comment on any findings. Nevertheless, it says reports regular supervision over banks upon finding violations or deviations. Banks are applied with sanctions and specific duties which usually involve improving internal control measures to prevent money laundering schemes and terrorism financing. Now, this also was flagged in the US with the what's your federal thing for money called in the US?
The Federal Reserve?
Not the Federal Reserve, the actual thing that they can actually, if they've got funny things to do with SWIFT, they can follow your money on SWIFT. Yeah? And they can then pinpoint where all the money's coming from. Oh, I can't remember everything, but anyway. So if we go to the Gateway Pundit page, which is the next one, right, so we have here, I know Gateway, a lot of people don't like Gateway Pundit, but sometimes they do come out with some good stuff. But it involves billions of IMF and US funds looted and lost by bank connected to Burisma Holdings. Now, why is it saying it's connected to Burisma Holdings? Well, there is a thing that Kolomoisky is connected to Tchaikovsky.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy that owns Burisma is also connected through to Kolomoisky, who also controlled TV stations and this bank. Now, the funny thing with the thing was that if there's a wonderful French independent researcher, journalist, who's been doing the research on this, he's fantastic. But there were 6 investigations going on at the time in 2016, started off in 2015, into Burisma and into Zlotkovsky's.
Oh, it's a Securities and Exchange Commission. Yeah, I was actually trying to search my brain for that, but that would be who would investigate it, Kevin, in the United States, the SEC.
Right. So that's the guy. So you got all these people involved in it. Now, when you start looking at all the names, you've got to, here we got, if you go down, you've got the Orange Revolution. Now you have a name, Leonid Kuchma. Now, Leonid Kuchma used to be the president up until 2004 and was overthrown by the Orange Revolution. His son-in-law is one Viktor Pinchuk. Viktor Pinchuk made his money under his father-in-law, Leonid Kuchma. Viktor Pinchuk is very closely related and connected to the Atlantic Council and also to the Clinton and Clinton foundations. He is also, at one point, was working with Dmitry Firtash. Dmitry Firtash is now being hunted by the US Department of Justice, and they're trying to extradite him still to this day from Austria. The reason why this is interesting because the main proponent of competition towards naphtha gas was European gas. When we start looking at the pictures, it starts to come out a bit more. You're going to see that all of Biden's people and Soros's people are involved in naphtha gas. But the money is also the other thing. So if we go down here, $4.51 billion, $2.97 billion special drawing rights to the IMF's own currency. We're looking at possibly $7 billion of missing money from this bank.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. So this bank, all of a sudden, in November, under the pressure of Biden, is now no longer a private bank. It is now a nationalized bank and run and controlled by the Ukrainian government. Do you see where this is starting to look very, very fishy as to why Biden is so determined to have this bank nationalized?
Yeah. So, I mean, to cover it up, obviously.
Yes, there's a big cover going on here. Right, so now if we go to the next page, which is Kolomoisky's billions of hryvnia, which is the currency of Ukraine, from Privat disappeared under the guise of Roshkova. Now, remember I told you her name earlier on. She's a very interesting character. She was second in charge under another woman, which we'll get to her as well a bit later. Former shareholder of Privat Bank, Igor Kolomoisky, commented on the investigation of journalists of the program schemes, which is claimed shortly that before the nationalisation of December 2016 of financial institution was withdrawn 110 billion hryvnias to the accounts of a firm dummy. After the program, so there was another, according to this, another firm where the money was getting funneled into by the looks of it. One of the more important, so go down, one more thought, in Privat Bank came 30 employees of the MBU in addition to the supervisor who was there before, and the company referred to the investigation chose the National Bank. That is second phase of the recapitalisation. Privat was held with the participation, monitoring and sensitive leadership of the MBU and personally Mrs. Roshkova. Then in Privat Bank were representatives of Ernst & Young. You're going to hear that name come up quite a bit soon as well, Ernst & Young. Now, Ernst & Young is this, what do you call them now? Bean council. They do all the finances, yeah?
Accountant.
Accountants, a big accountancy firm worldwide. But Ernst & Young is also a corrupt company. If you go into the history of Ernst & Young, you'll find that they were involved in lots of scams. And I've come across Ernst & Young here in Poland as well with dodgy stuff going on. So why is Ernst & Young being used with Privat Bank? Why wasn't it, say, for instance, the World Bank involved in it? No, it's Ernst & Young. Why was it that specific company?
Why?
Do you see the scam that's going on here? So Ernst & Young makes this report saying that basically this bank's kaput. Therefore, we must nationalise it. We must pump all this money back into it to stabilise it, so that the Ukrainian people, the poor Ukrainian people, have their bank back.
Yeah. It's a shell game.
It's a shell game. So they've shut the main laundering bank down, which was Privat Bank. Because Ernst & Young, so if we go to the S&P Global Marketing Intelligence, the next page, that's not it,
Did I miss one?
That's not it.
I might have missed one.
Is it?
Let me see. Which
No,
one?
it's not.
Which one?
Because it says Privat Bank disputes related missing billions puts Ukraine government to the test. The legal standoff between Ukraine's largest lender, JSC CB Privat Bank, and its former owner is a test for the country's new government as it implements political and anti-corruption reforms. Privat Bank is Ukraine's largest bank by assets and was nationalised in December 2016 due to allegations of fraud and concerns over sector-wide stability. The former controlling shareholder businessman, Ihor Kolomoisky, left Ukraine amid allegation he had used Privat Bank to launder hundreds of millions of dollars, but has since returned. He wants to reclaim his stake in the lender and has taken the dispute to the courts. So a lot of people are saying that because Zelensky, who's the president, used to work as a comedian before he became a president, yeah? He's used to work at the TV channels that was owned by Kolomoisky. So if you've got IMF pressure here, if you go down a little bit, it says IMF pressure. While Zelensky has not yet ruled out a settlement with Kolomoisky, he has said there should be no compensation, though resolving the dispute in this manner could imperil IMF loans, Reuters reported October the 11th, citing Katerina Ryzhkova, Deputy Governor of the Ukrainian Central Bank. So this woman, again, who was the deputy, we have what we see. I know it's very complicated, John, isn't it? I do apologize.
But you are breaking it down better than I've seen many people do. It's just extremely complicated.
It is extremely complicated because the whole of this also goes to the fact that in 2015 the British froze $23 million of Tchaikovsky's money from Burisma. You've also got this court case between Pinchuk and Kolomoisky in 2012 and his other partner, that went on in the UK courts as well. So NBU never seen a candidate for the post of head of Privat Bank. So that's the next page, which is the one with the green sign pictured. Well, that one, that's the one. So the National Bank of Ukraine has not yet approved the appointment of the new chairman of the board of the Privat Bank, nationalised. Instead, reassigned in July, Alexander Schwach, that was announced by the deputy head of the bank, NBU, Katerina Ryzhkova. While the supervisory board will not elect a candidate who does not appoint him, will see of him, she said. Ryzhkova explained that the agreement of control the chairman of the board of the bank includes a mandatory interview with the board of the NBU. Now, this Ryzhkova character is quite an interesting woman, and we'll get into her a bit in a minute.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to see is you've got a battle going on between the government, Kolomoisky, the IMF, created in 2016 by it being nationalised.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
Who created the nationalisation was Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He forced that bank to be nationalised. Now we've got all this chaos going on around it. Now, if you go to the next picture, the Privat Bank picture, there's the picture of the woman herself, Katrina. Not that one. Not that one. That's the one. So, Privat Bank had to sell off Bukovo, the building of the TV channel 1+1 and the aircraft MAU MBU. So, in other words, they were selling the assets off of Kolomoisky's to cover the bank.
Yeah.
So the picture there is your woman that's in charge, the deputy, this Katrina Roshkova. So according to Roshkova, in 2016, when the capitalization of Privat Bank was put on the balance, non-core assets, ski resorts, Bukovo, the stadium of Dimna Arena, and the premises of the TV channel 1+1, Plains Real Estate, were all sold off. Last year, during the first stage of recapitalisation of the assets was taken on the bank's balance sheet in repayment of credit debt, among them Bukovo Real Estate and Aircraft MAU, said the deputy head of the MBU. So this is all of Kolomoisky's property. So Kolomoisky's stuff has been taken off of him by this woman in the bank, and sold off. So Kolomoisky's not a nice man, yeah?
No.
And he wants his stuff back. But the person that stopped all of that, like I said, let's go back to this, who caused this, was Joe Biden. Now we go to the Tennessee Star. Record of 1.8 billion in aid, which is the US aid money, right? Which is 1.8 billion linked to a corrupt oligarch who bankrolled the Ukraine revolution. So there is a possibility that the money that was being funneled into Privat Bank was then being financing the revolution and also the private army to fight the Russians and the Eastern Ukrainians in the East. In other words, this was funding a proxy war through the back door by US aid and the National Endowment for Democracy. But the National Endowment for Democracy money can be traced because it has to go through the Senate, whereas the US aid money doesn't. So here we go. Calling the scandal bigger than the Reagan-era Contra scandal, the Blaze founder said that his research team made a discovery while looking into the phone call between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, which spurred the Democrats' now failed impeachment charade. Becky explained that there was things in the phone call that just didn't make sense to us, and that prompted them to do a deep dive on what happened to the 1.8 billion in aid that went missing in Privat Bank, the largest commercial bank in Ukraine, which is owned by the corrupt oligarch Mikhail Kolomoisky. After former President Barack Obama made then Vice President Joe Biden his point man in Ukraine, the Veep sent $3 billion in aid to Ukraine, and Burisma Holdings, where his son Hunter sat on the board, was implicated in the disappearance of 1.8 billion of that money. Now, if you listen to the speech that Biden did when he first went over to Ukraine, he talks about putting money into the gas sector. So here's a guy running on saying he's going to transition out of natural gas and everything else, and yet in Eastern Europe he's funding it.
Yeah.
So you can see it's a whole hornet's nest what's going on here. And here we got, if you go down further down, you've got John Kerry, who's also involved in all of that scandal. There's a video of John Kerry there. So you can see all the same names, the same players, the same people.
John Kerry defending Biden's fire 2016 of Viktor Shokin.
Yes.
Kerry argued that everyone in the Obama administration wanted Shokin fired. We knew that if Ukraine was going to survive and win the election in the end, the maiden, they had to get rid of the prosecutor.
So
That's why they've had to fire the prosecutors investigating Brisson in order to win a revolution.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing, right? Shokin didn't take the office until February the 10th, 2015. And then on March 2016, he was forced to leave the job, yeah, because Biden forced them to sack him. Yet, under Shokin's tenure, they had done more against corruption than any other individual. The guy that took over from Lukashenko, the so-called stand-up guy, according to Biden, is also in these emails with him coming across to see the Clinton team. So,
what about the claims of some people, Kevin, that some people in Ukraine were not happy with Viktor Shokin? I've heard other researchers make that claim that, yeah, it's definitely true that, you know, Biden, you know,
then why
made the call.
Did Poroshenko, in a phone call, and this is Poroshenko's own words, state they had nothing on Viktor Shokin. He was not corrupt at all. In fact, he was clean. That was Poroshenko talking to Biden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because what happened, again, what you're seeing again is the media, the whole of the media is giving this information, yeah, and then it runs with this information and creates the narrative that they want to put out. Like, for instance, remember weapons of mass destruction, how the media pushed that lie? So here we got a picture of Ryzhkova again. So here we have the National Bank of Ukraine has deprived the first deputy head, Katerina, of its powers of banking supervision. For something happened now. And this was in October this year, that she's stripped of her powers. So by this decision, it's become known that the agency's new vertical was created in the LBRY regulations of the financial sector, which will be headed by Ryzhkova. It includes the Department of Methodology for it. So in other words, she's been demoted. So why? What's going on? Again, this information is not forthcoming. This is the woman that was in charge of all the private bank stuff. Now, all of a sudden, she's now demoted.
That's interesting. So, yeah, they took away her powers on banking supervision.
Yes. So here we got NBU, which is the National Bank of Ukraine, the return of private bank to Exxon is impossible through cancellation and nationalisation. So this could possibly be the reason why she was demoted, because they've done it in such a way that there is no way Kolomoisky or anybody else can get their bank back. So in other words, they stole. I mean, I know Kolomoisky is a criminal, and it's quite humorous, but the corrupt government of Poroshenko, which was run by Biden, has actually stole the bank from Kolomoisky, who's a criminal that got his bank through criminal actions. I mean, you couldn't make this up even if you wanted to. So you've got all these situations with this bank. This bank is massive because, like I said, there is $7 billion of money missing. 1.8 billion of it is from US aid. $4.4 million went to ANTAC. That ANTAC deal was what was paid for, was the Black Ledger. The journalist guy, as soon as the Black Ledger was released, went and bought himself a brand new condo. I mean, this goes through so many different circles of corruption, but this is, like I said, this is the hornet's nest of it all. We have to look at Burisma, we have to look at Naftogaz, you have to look at Antac, and of course Privatbank. But you're not going to get into Privatbank now because they nationalised it. It's owned by the Ukrainian people now. So the only way you're going to do this is if they do a RICO. They have to do a RICO investigation on all the money. Now, we know from previous discussions we've got the fact that Kolomoisky's business in the US, which was in Illinois and Florida, where they got the buildings and the money from that, and they started collecting the money back that way. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talk about where the where they had to do the raid?
Yeah. Remember that?
Yes, that happened on, I had to look it up, August the 4th. FBI and IRS agents in Cleveland and Miami on Tuesday raided the offices of a company tied to Ukrainian oligarchs suspected of pushing, well, I mean, this is going to be, so they raided offices of Kolomoisky, and the company was Optima Management.
That's it. Another shell company.
Yes.
So, if you go to Interfax Ukraine, which is the next one along, you've got ex-owner Privatbank Kolomoisky outraged with accusations of systematic fraud. One of the former owners of Privatbank, Ihor Kolomoisky, has been extremely outraged with statements of the National Bank of Ukraine about systematic frauds in the financial institution before it was nationalised. Delirium, which was the point in commenting on, he told TSN Ukraine news service on Tuesday. At the same time, Kolomoisky noted the reproach that the MBU, that the former management of the bank, worked on the interests of the shareholder, and in whose interest they had to work in the interest of the Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine. Petro Poroshenko, or Gontravera with Rozhkova, MBO, and Valerie Gontravera. Now, she's an interesting character as well. And her deputy, Katerina Rozhkova, Kolomoisky said. So here we have Poroshenko's corruption coming out through Biden as well. So Valerie Gontravera, if we go to the Guardian article, which is the next one, it's revenge. Ukraine ex-central banker blames oligarch for attacks. It is possible when a car drove into Valerie Gontravera, a pedestrian crossing in Knightsbridge, central London, in late August, it was merely an accident. But soon after a while, Gontravera was recovered in hospital. Her son's car was set on fire back at home in Kiev, and a few days later, her family home in Ukraine capital was also burned down. For Gontravera, there was no doubt that the attackers are part of disturbing patterns. So she basically accused Ihor Kolomoisky of burning down her house and trying to assassinate her in London. And the press ran with this. But if you go to, this is the head of the National Bank of Ukraine, and her number 2 is Rozhkova. She has refused to return back to Ukraine, and she's still teaching in London.
Yes.
To this day. So if you go to the next page, which is the police suspect the ex-head of the National Bank, Gontravera, of ordering arson on her own home. She basically set her son's car, got somebody to burn her son's car down, burn her house down, so they could frame Kolomoisky to push the nationalisation of the bank even further. So this whole scam is starting to look even more fishy. So when they nationalised, this bank should never have been nationalised.
It's just heading the National Bank of Ukraine from June 2014 up to March 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Gontravera.
So basically, she basically made out the fact that So they've got to keep selling this narrative about Kolomoisky. Now we know Kolomoisky's a bad guy. There's no ifs or buts about Kolomoisky being a bad guy.
But it's just a further circling of corruptions, almost like mob wars and gain ground.
Yeah. But again, we go to seeing how all of this corruption works with Joe Biden. The ex-US, did you pick up the Radio Free Liberty one?
I might have missed that one, but again, I have to mention that Radio Free Liberty is United States CIA propaganda.
Yeah, but the ex-US diplomat steps down from NAFTA gas ports, citing Ukrainian corruption concerns. And who was that guy? That's it.
Amos Hochstein.
Hochstein. And why is Amos Hochstein so important? Because Amos Hochstein, they set up this scam with NAFTA gas, yeah, where they pumped the gas, Russian gas, into Slovakia. And then from Slovakia, they repumped it back into Ukraine, saying it was European gas, and sold it at European prices. Therefore, they robbed the Ukrainian people of higher prices in gas, in water, in electricity, and in foodstuffs, because obviously the price of gas had gone up because they said it's not coming from Russia.
So Amos Hochstein was working at the State Department. He was a close advisor to then Vice President Joe Biden. He served in the administration from 2011 to 2017. So he was the United States Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs under Barack Obama, the Obama administration.
And he is the guy, that warned Joe Biden, about his son going to Burisma, because they wanted to keep what they were doing with NAFTA gas quiet. They didn't want anybody looking in that way. And because Hunter Biden and Devon Archer had gone to the most corrupt business in Ukraine, which was Burisma, which then would link them, all their proceedings would then probably be investigated through Privat Bank.
So Hochstein was on the board of the Atlantic Council.
Yeah, here we go again. Atlantic Council again.
He was appointed in 2017, but resigned in October 2020.
If you go to the Financial Times page, it says Ukraine's Privat Bank seeks 5.5 billion damages from the oligarchs. Now, I'll get to him in a minute. He's very important here.
Hold on, let me get the Financial Times. I can't. That one requires the subscriptions. I wasn't able to bring that one up, Kevin.
Okay. So basically, it's say the Privat Bank is seeking they're wanting 5.5 billion in damages. So if Kolomoisky is supposed to have stolen all this money, this $7 billion, and now he wants 5.5 billion damages because they stole his bank from him. But this one here, have you got it translated?
Yes, I did.
Kavishnesky. Now, who is Kavishnesky? Kavishnesky used to be the former president of Poland between 1994 to 2005. I've talked about him before. He also sits on the Atlantic Council. He was also good friends with George Soros, and he was also good friends with a certain general from Serbia, who got him into a position on an oil company called PNK Oil in Poland, and put him on the board of directors. So who is Kavishnisky? He also sits on the board of Burisma, and he's one of the main people who's also connected to Donald Tusk. And he's under investigation still for his money. He has a place down in Katowice, which they're investigating, where he got the money from. Yeah? So here we go. The regional prosecutor's office in Katowice, once again, this time in December, extended the investigation to the assets of President Alexander Kavishnisky and his wife. The proceeding, which occurs in the circumstances of the purchase of a villa, were taken in 2016 after an early remorse. So they've been trying to get into this guy's finances. So I can't say how corrupt these people are. But again, who's he connected to? He's connected also to Biden through Hunter Biden. He's also connected to the Atlantic Council.
Yeah.
So here's the former Polish president, who's now, for instance, sitting on the board of one of the most corrupt companies in Europe, probably in the world, yeah, called Burisma, how it came about is through corruption, through theft. The guy that's running it is a criminal, a crook, a thief, and also a very dangerous man who's in charge of it. And this is supposed to be the former president of Poland. And in 2010, he was given an award by the Atlantic Council in Wrocław, the same year that the president that took over from him, Lech Kaczynski, died in a plane crash, and half of the Polish parliament was killed in that plane crash in Smolensk, April the 10th, 2010. And in that speech that Kaczynski spoke, not one word was ever mentioned about the tragedy that befell them a few months earlier. He didn't even mention it once. And that is concerning.
Yeah.
This is a guy that took over from you, president that was killed in an aircraft thing that your best buddy, Donald Tusk, yeah, had basically given all the investigation over to your worst enemies, the Russians, without anybody knowing about it, and you don't mention a word of it. Now you're attached to a company called Burisma. You're defending Burisma, you're defending the Bidens, and you're attacking the thing saying that the Donald Trump is coming after Burisma because of Hunter Biden. Because I keep saying Ukraine is the key. It's always been the key to the whole of this mess. And why? Because, yeah, they've got all this China documents, but China's too big for anybody to understand. Ukraine will be easier for people to understand when they start realizing, when you listen to the phone calls between Joe Biden and Petro Poroshenko, which, by the way, YouTube took all of them down. They've blocked it all off, and I believe they went onto Vimeo, and Vimeo's now taken down. So somebody in power is stopping people from hearing this information and what's coming out of what they were doing in Ukraine. Like I told you before, how Ukraine came about was in 2012, when our friend Mr. Alexander Ross, who went there with his tax calls on behalf of Hillary Clinton.
Civil Society 2.0.
Civil Society 2.0. And don't forget also, it's not called a colour revolution. The Ukrainian revolution is called the Revolution of Dignity.
So one thing...
When you look at Serbia, Serbia was not called a colour revolution. It was called the bulldozer revolution.
So one thing I too want to mention is it appears that they're going to try... Okay, so there was reports at first that they were going to try to replace Amos Hochstein with Council for National Policy member and former Texas Governor Rick Perry. It turned out that that wasn't true. However, there is a guy named Robert Benesh, who is a Houston-based oil and gas executive. They're trying to now put him on the board of NAFTA Gas, and he is backed by Rick Perry, and to replace Amos Hochstein. So again, it seems like it's a shell game against the Ukrainian people.
Yes.
Because Rick Perry's an ardent neoconservative. Like, he is... I mean, I remember Alex Jones used to rail against him until Trump appointed him. I mean, Rick Perry's one of the worst. So, it seems like they're trying to put his guy in.
But don't you see? Why did Hochstein... Hochstein jumped because of the connection to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Hochstein is up to his neck in this. And he knows it. and so is Yanukovych, Maria Yanukovych. She's up to her neck in this. The only way you're going to get this solved in the US is one, that Trump wins re-election, and two, they set a special counsel up, because this has got to be done by special counsel. You cannot trust the FBI, you cannot trust the CIA, and you cannot trust the DOJ. You're going to have to set a special counsel up from outside of Washington, D.C., and the people doing it have to be completely vetted.
Because if not, nothing's going to be done.
Otherwise, nothing gets done. And if Biden gets in, guess what? It will all disappear.
Now, I have to... You're right about that. If Biden gets in, it will all completely disappear. There's a possibility of Trump getting reelected too that nothing happens also as well, though, Kevin. I have to make that known.
Yeah, there is that possibility. But it's bigger but I don't think so, because I think Trump's pissed. I think Trump is really pissed with this now. And I think that's the whole thing there. See, Hochstein is also another weak link in the chain. And if the pressure's put on him, he will sing like a canary. He's not going to go down for Biden. Like, for instance, what was his name? Bobolinsky, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Tony Bobolinsky. He wasn't going to go down for Biden, so he stood up and spoke about it. So did this other guy, the one in prison. Begins with C. But he's not going down for it either. So you can see that the rats are jumping off the ship. He left in October this year. Why? Because the writing's on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The writing's on the wall. So these people are going to run for cover. This is one big, huge mess, but this just shows you how much corruption there was. But it still goes back to this Privat bank, which no one's talking about. Nobody's talking about this bank.
I mean, Hochstein resigning in October 2020 and being like, well, you know, it's because naphtha gas is corrupt. It's like, dub. Like, it was corrupt when you were there. You know, it's like, yes, just because they're trying...
George Soros used the State Department to go after their rival, which was Dmitry Firtash. That looks like what's happened here. So the oligarchs are using the Americans' State Department to go after their business rivals. I mean, the oligarchs are dodgy as anything, as we full well know. But I don't know who's worse, them or people like Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's been doing this for years. And the stuff that's coming out, I mean, a lot of it's to do with China, and I'm not interested in the Chinese side of it. I mean, there is a thing from Burisma talking about outcharging of the gas with naphtha gas. So is there a connection between Burisma gas holdings with naphtha gas and the ripping off of Ukrainian people? I can't remember where I put that. If I put it there. Yeah, the AKA Burisma. Did I send you that thing from Vladimir Pasharsky? Pasharsky was the manager of Burisma. To Hunter Biden and Devon Arja.
Okay, yeah. Let me bring that up.
Dear colleagues, just to let you know that either today or during the next days, our Polish colleague, is that a different one? What's that one saying on that one?
A plan to skirt Russian state energy behemoth Gazprom by reverse flowing natural gas into Ukraine has been hindered by reticence from neighboring Slovakia, seemingly due to pressure from the Russian company. Vadim, I hope you have a nice holiday. Can you please Plan to send us daily or weekly updates as they happen from your press and observations from the ground, so we can continue our reconnaissance and signaling with interpretation as real time from Ukraine. Certainly through these vital days and weeks, it's productive. Thank you, Devin Archer.
So how much did they steal from the Ukrainian people? Was $1.5 billion.
Yeah.
The other one here, we've got, dear colleagues, just to let you know, either today or during the next days, our Polish colleagues will comment personally that he also on the board. I believe it will help to cool down the media pressure that you are experiencing now. Please wait until that happens to build our strategy from there. So who's the Polish colleague they're talking about? The former Polish president that sits on the board. So Burisma are now coming to the aid of protecting Biden Jr., Hunter Biden, because they've got to protect their other asset, which they've bought and paid for, which is Joe Biden. And by the looks of the stuff that's coming out, Hunter Biden was still getting paid up until last year from Burisma, even though he's supposed to have left the company in 2017.
Wow.
But that's what I'm saying. They've got to release the whole of these files so people can see all of it instead of this drip, drip, drip nonsense. Because in there is all that information. People can start digging through. Like myself, I have certain words I will put in there that I can then find and connect and find the relevant documentation.
Like how it was with the Podesta emails and WikiLeaks.
Yeah. Exactly. It's got to be done the same way as that. So people can go in there and locate what they're looking for. Because what we're seeing here is this whole spider web that goes across the whole globe. And it goes across everywhere. But where I told people the key to all of this is Ukraine, because Ukraine is so corrupt, but they're so busy stabbing each other in the back because it's an everyday normal occurrence of corruption in Ukraine. So nobody's bothered by it. So they talk openly about the corruption, which is why I keep saying Ukraine is the key, because this is what will bring them down, because they were so greedy that Hunter Biden and Devin Archer went into the most corrupt business possible. Why? Because they knew they could buy him. Because this guy knew he could buy Joe Biden to protect his interests within Ukraine and on the world stage. And in so doing so, they now got Burisma into the Atlantic Council. And they talk about taking corruption out of Ukraine, and yet this company was built from corruption. And now it sits on the Atlantic Council, next to another corrupt individual called Victor Pinchot. You couldn't make this up, John. You really can't make this up.
No.
They stole all that money when they had this so-called revolution of dignity. This guy, Nikolai Zharkovsky, should be behind bars and all of his assets taken and Burisma shut down. But instead, what's happened is because he's connected to Kolomoisky, who had the main bank in Ukraine, they controlled everything. So when Joe Biden goes there as the front man and they realise they can buy Joe Biden, guess what? Here, we'll put your son on the board. Meanwhile, Hochstein's saying to him, don't let him go on that board because it will blow what we're doing here with naphtha gas. Because who's involved in naphtha gas as well is one of the secret people involved in that is George Soros.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what they do. They go into these countries, they cause the revolution, and then they go and take over the natural resources, like for instance the gas and the oil, and anything else to do, which the people then have to pay exorbitant prices to, in order to live, because they control it all. So they cause the revolution and they steal back from them again.
Yeah.
And this is why I say you've got to have a special counsel now to fully go through all of this, to expose all of them. Because this will have a whole list of names within the State Department, within the embassies, within these think tanks, like, for instance, Brookings Institute, with the people at the Atlantic Council. This will trove a whole list of names.
Yeah.
And members of your CNP will be in there. There'll be people at the International Republican Institute, the National Endowment for Democracy, the USAID. All of these organisations, you'll find all the corruption is interwoven in all of them. And of course, the big question will have to be is, why did Joe Biden get Poroshenko, one of the most corrupt presidents in Ukraine's history, to nationalise the bank, which was a privately owned bank? Why did he force it to be nationalised? It's nothing to do with Joe Biden or American interests to nationalise a bank. That is inherent to the country it belongs to. It's got nothing to do with Joe Biden. So why was Joe Biden so determined to have that bank nationalised? And you've got the phone calls, and he didn't want Trump or anybody else going in there. Why? Because they would have seen where all the money would go, and they would start asking questions. Because as soon as you start asking questions about what's going on here, then it all starts to unravel. It's like this whole thing with Joe Biden running for president. He's not running for president. It's Kamala Harris. He's doing it just so he can protect his son. This is all he's doing it for. He's not interested in you or the country or protecting or healing the country. He's only interested in one thing: protecting his son. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but that's a fact here. It's so obvious now that all he's trying to do now is protect his son, and obviously his business interests. Because if he gets in, that's it. China owns everything. We have to get people to start asking questions about this bank, with that bank, because that is one of the most important keys. Like I've told people about Skolkovo.
Yep.
You know, nobody talks about Skolkovo. They talk about Uranium One, but they don't talk about Skolkovo. Why? Because nobody knows anything about it.
And Biden's connected to Skolkovo too as well. He met with Menendez and Putin and went to Skolkovo and
Victor Vekselberg.
Yep.
Victor
Clinton
Vekselberg.
Foundation, the Clintons.
Yeah, it's connected to the Clinton Foundation. You know, this whole thing shows every single one of our politicians are into this international criminal mafia. And this whole lockdown business is a joke. It doesn't matter what country you're in, John. They're all connected one way or another through this corruption.
Yeah, Skolkovo is just a way to transfer technology from the United States to Russia to reinforce the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yes. The Belt and Road Initiative, which was who was there in 2013 to give it its guiding lift?
Who?
Biden.
Yeah.
Biden was there. Biden didn't do anything to stop the Belt and Road Initiative. In fact, he encouraged it. It's the same year that his son went there as well, who got that massive lucrative deal from the fucking Bank of China, $1.5 billion. And nobody in the media or anybody saying, whoa, hang on a minute, what the hell's going on here? You've got the video of him coming off Air Force Two with his father. And I think it's his brother's, his dead brother's wife, I believe, at the time. I can't remember who he was there with somebody, but the whole situation with the Bidens is just perverse. It's sick. It's twisted. It's full of greed. It's dishonesty. It's lies. It is everything you physically hate is embodied in this one man. And he sits there saying, "Oh, I'm good old Joe from Scranton."
Come on, man.
Come on, man. I mean, I can't explain how infuriating it is for me to hear people saying about Joe Biden being this great guy. He is not a great guy. He is a crook. He's a thief. He's a liar. And everything you're seeing now that's coming out shows all that. And yet nobody is going to do anything about it.
Come on, man. Biden.
It's beyond corruption. This is beyond.
Well, Biden is one of the most, if not the most corrupt modern senator in the United States history.
Yeah. He's sold all the jobs. I mean, Avic took over that company in Michigan, which was supposed to be on the CFIUS board. And how the hell it got through the CFIUS board? Oh, isn't that surprising? The same thing. Who's his buddy? John Kerry was the Secretary of State, which would have passed this sale of this company to this Chinese company, Avic, I think it was, which is involved in stealth technology. Because it was not meant to be sold. Don't forget, Five Eyes Partners have warned and said you can't buy this because the Chinese are trying to get this, this, and this, and they would have known about it. So what is our security? What is your security people doing? They should have known all this was going on. The NSA and all why did they allow this to carry on? This is something else. They're spying on all these people, and yet they've got a guy that's so corrupt and compromised. Why were they still allowing it to go on?
Yeah, I mean, they transferred the Promise software in the 1990s around the globe to Israel and everyone else. So, I mean, they've been transferring our technology and selling us out Americans, from whenever, So,
yeah, but John, this was flagged. The money coming in was flagged by the I've forgotten the name of the thing again. But it was flagged by them, including the $3.5 million from Butarina, the former wife of the mayor of Moscow. And there's also it's above that. It's above $3.5 million. It's looking about nearly on $5 million, and it's connected to $200 million in investments in building things, because that's how they launder their money. They buy the buildings or they build stuff with it, and that's how they're laundering the money. Because don't forget, when they took out Kolomoisky in Cleveland, what was the thing that they got into? The buildings. And the same in Florida. And the person that was kicking off the most about making sure that Durham didn't give his report out before the election, that Congresswoman from Florida's husband was working for Kolomoisky. You find all the connections, and you just follow the money, and it just drives you nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back, like I said, my question would be now, why was Joe Biden wanting Privat Bank nationalised? It's none of his damn business. It's like for somebody coming from UK turning around to President Trump saying you got to nationalise the Bank of America, yeah? Or so if it's a Chase Bank, yeah? Or whatever, some privately owned bank. No, you've got to nationalise that. You just don't, it goes against international law. So what gave Biden permission to get Poroshenko to nationalise a bank? It's none of Biden's business.
Yeah.
This bank scared Biden so much for him to panic, to make various phone calls about this bank to Poroshenko, to the point But when it was done in December of 2016, he thought he got away with it all. I mean, could you give me an answer to that, John?
No.
We know he's involved with Brisson through his son. We know he's involved with Naftogaz through Hochstein. So why is he involved with the bank or private bank? Unless the money could be traced to an illegal proxy war. And that's what I think it possibly could be. I think they funded an illegal proxy war against Russia and Eastern Ukraine, financing it through the US aid money, yeah? And I think that's why they shut that bank down so quickly. So nobody could ever find that out.
Yeah. I can see that. Is there anything you want to finish in closing, Kevin? Thank you for coming on and talking about
hopefully, I know
the Bidens.
Very confusing for people, and I do apologise immensely for how confusing it is.
Mark from Houston Tonic Live in the chat said that if you want to, he would get with you about trying to work out some sort of timeline presentation or something, or using some sort of software to lay it all out if you wanted to. So. Yeah,
because it's so complicated, and I much appreciated, Mark. I mean, the fact is that all this money was going to these people, and I said this bank is niggling me to like nothing else. Somebody needs to have that question and that answer to why a sovereign country to another sovereign country is telling them how to organise their banks. It's got nothing to do with America. It's got nothing to do with Biden. And Lee's right there with US aid. Yes, US aid is used to finance these so-called revolutions. The reason why they don't use the National Endowment for Democracy anymore is because you have to go through the Senate. And that's the problem. I mean, I've been going through these emails and stuff like that, and it's just so much information. It just, I mean, if Mark Husodolic looks at these emails himself, he'll see how massive this, and it involves so many people. I mean, this Bohai BHR thing they've got, yeah.
Yeah.
This China, this is another shell company. And the money that's going through these people. But like I said, what will hang them will be that bank, private bank. But nobody is willing to go into there and ask that question. I agree, Mark. We do have hundreds of hours of research, and the people should get this information. And one of the biggest informations being is Joe Biden should not be voted on at all. He should be not even on the list to run for president. He should be under investigation as we're talking now. Yeah, laws for thee and not for me. It's this is the most corrupt. I just, like I said, I think. But until we can get into the bank, we're never going to know. And because you can't get into the bank now because it's nationalised. They covered up whatever it is they were doing by nationalising that bank, and that is the problem. ANTAC, anti-corruption, was using the Privat Bank, still uses Privat Bank now for its finances, its money going through there, which is also connected to Soros. Don't forget, the head of Privat Bank, not Privat Bank, of ANTAC, visited Obama in 2015, in December 2015, and then all of a sudden, ANTAC was getting all this money, and the Black Ledger appeared to get rid of Paul Manafort. But she went to Obama in 2015, and the guy David Sucker, I can't pronounce his surname, he's so bloody long, who was the Deputy Attorney General, was in Washington, D.C. in January of 2016 with none other than Chalupa and Charamella. And this is the guy we then said was the whistleblower against Viktor Shokin, that brought all these stories about Viktor Shokin out that turned out to be all false and lies. Viktor Shokin is much a victim of this as anybody else. He's not living in a massive mansion like he's the guy that took over from Lukashenko. He's in a tiny rumble-down old cottage. He's living on his pension. So this is the great mastermind that's supposed to be doing all this corruption, and well, he's not very good at it. And that's why it really gets my back up when people say, oh yeah, well, Shokin was fired because he was corrupt. Shokin was not corrupt because Poroshenko told us he wasn't corrupt. The person who was corrupt was Biden, but why did Biden brag about it at the CFR? He's either stupid or he was doing it to say, if I go down, you go down, sort of attitude.
Well, thank you.
I mean, God help us if it gets in tomorrow. God help us.
Thank you for coming on, Kevin. I know you're not going to, stop digging on this, no matter who wins the election.
Well, the trouble being is if he wins, it doesn't matter how much I dig on it, I will never be able to get my voice out again, because the freedom of First Amendment or your freedom of voice will be gone. It'll be gone under them. First Amendment and everything else, they'll be gone if he gets in tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree with Mark Pantano. I don't think it's going to be that extreme.
Oh, it is. Because he's not the one going to be in charge. It's the nut jobs, the woke crowd, the extreme leftists that's taken over the Democratic Party. They see this as their opportunity.
Then that would mean that all of Trump's appointments, their conservatives on the Supreme Court would have to swing the other direction. So
no. They'll pack the courts. They've already said they're going to pack the courts.
Maybe. Mark Pantano again said that it would be disastrous for Biden to do so.
He's already said he's going to do it. They're going to do it. They don't give a shit because they're going to make it a one-party system.
No, so it already is a one-party system.
No, a real one-party system. It's only going to be Democrat and that's it. And it'll be done to the Chinese model that if you don't agree with them, then you're on a social credit score will go down and you'll be silenced even more.
Yeah, the social credit platform is coming out. Eventually, one way or another, it is.
With big tech in the pocket of these people, yeah, of course it is. Don't forget who's in the camp of Biden. Big tech, it's all there. But like I said, let's pray for tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I'll be covering it tomorrow evening, we'll see. I still think that Trump needs to win, so that people can see whatever happens. Because if he doesn't win, there's going to be another 4 years of whataboutism.
Yeah,
so.
Well, like I said, if he gets in, then he's going to have to do something about it, and he knows that. If he doesn't get in, then it's never going to ever happen anyway. It'll be buried straight away. And more than likely, they'll trump up charges, excuse the pun, against Trump and charge him with something so they make sure that nobody ever decides to ever go into that thought of being running for president outside of the Washington bubble. They'll shut it down. So it will never, ever happen again. Because they'll lose their power and their gravy train, which is what the problem is, and that's what this is all about, their gravy train.
Well, we shall see. Tomorrow will be an important day, that's for sure. All right, Kevin, we'll have you back on again soon. One last thing, when are you going to start putting videos back on your channel?
When am I going to start putting videos back on the channel is in the next few weeks. I've just wanted to take some time out doing the research and putting some stuff together. I want to try and put it into a more easier format because it's so much information. It's like I was worried today with all the information I come out with today. Is there's so much information there that people can't follow it and they lose track of what it is. I've got to try and put it into bite-sized nodules so people can understand the actual significance of why it's important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been nice not to have to do that, but I've not stopped researching because I've been going through all the paperwork and the documentations. And obviously with all the videos and everything else that have come out, it's horrifying. It's really horrifying. And the fact that nobody in the media or nobody is asking questions is disgusting. Joe Biden should not be on that ticket, full stop. He should be under investigations. This man is a danger to the very freedoms that your forefathers fought for.
I think probably every president. I mean, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan,
Yeah,
Obama. I mean,
there's nothing. The guy that's in bed with the Chinese, literally in bed with the Chinese, John. This guy is in bed with the Chinese. They own him. The documentation is there. The evidence is there. It's just, but again, the FBI is only interested in going after people chasing after his bust and actually going into looking into this so-called laptop. The FBI's. You know, that's another thing. The FBI's got to be gone. The CIA's got to be gone. The DOJ's got to have root and branch clear out. So something's got to be done.
I agree with that. I just don't see anything being done. That's the thing.
That's the trouble, because nobody's willing to take that risk. But then my other thought with if Trump gets if he gets a second term, he knows this is his last term. Will he go completely in and do that? Because he's got nothing to lose.
I guess we'll see.
I guess we'll see. Let's hope he wins. Let's hope he wins.
All right, Kevin, I want to thank you for coming on. That's Kevin's channel up there on the screen, Agent Serco. Take care, everybody. Lee and I have a show to do this evening on Nexium in the Val. Take care, everybody. God bless you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. All right, Kevin, I got to go, brother. I got to...